Penguin Random House Audio presents The Curious Kitten at the Chibineko Kitchen by Yuta Takahashi, translated by Kat Anderson. Read for you by Hanako Footman.
1. A ginger patch cat and a dish of simmered fish. Ainame, fat greenling. A delicacy, fat greenling can be fished in the waters all around Japan, by rocky shores or out on reefs where its food is plentiful. It can be caught off Uchibo, on the western side of the Boso Peninsula in Chiba Prefecture. The fishing season runs from summer to winter. Fat greenling has a mild flavour and is delicious served as sashimi with the skin seared, marinated and grilled with sansho pepper leaf, or cooked in a hot pot. The black-tailed gulls were soaring. She had come across them before in books and on TV, but this was probably her first time seeing them in real life. They were known as sea cats, and with their mewing cries, meow, meow, it was obvious why. There was something mournful about the sound, and it put her in mind of a stray kitten. Kotoko Nikki, who was turning 20 that year, was visiting a seaside town in Uchibo. Blue sea, blue sky, a sandy beach, and running along behind it, an unpaved path covered in white shells instead of tarmac. According to the directions she'd been given over the phone, if she continued walking along this path, she would reach the Chibineko Kitchen. That was the name of her destination, the restaurant by the sea. It wasn't even 9 in the morning yet, which was perhaps why there was no one out on the beach. In fact, she had hardly caught a glimpse of anyone on her way here. This seemed to be a quiet town, unlike Tokyo, where she'd come from today. A town by the sea, she murmured. She gazed at the gulls and the beach a little longer, and then set off down the white path. The seashells clattered noisily under her feet. She felt as though she was disturbing the atmosphere of the sleepy town with her racket. It was the middle of October, but autumn still hadn't arrived. The summer weather continued unabated, the sun beating down incessantly from a cloudless blue sky. Kotoko was glad she'd worn a hat with a wide brim to protect her from the sunshine. The hat was white, and she wore a white dress, too. With her fair skin, long hair, and her neat, almost old-fashioned clothes, she would have fitted in well in a previous century. Her older brother, Yuito, had loved to tease her about this. "You look so retro, Kotoko," he would say, "like a posh young lady from the 50s. Even just remembering it, she had to fight back the tears. It wasn't out of frustration at having been teased. The reason Kotoko felt like crying was because her brother was no longer with her. He was no longer part of this world, having died 3 months earlier. He had died, and it was Kotoko's fault. The universities were off for the summer holidays. It was evening, and Kotoko was on her way out. An author she was keen on had just written a new book, and she planned to pick up a copy from the big bookshop in front of the station. She could easily have bought it online, but it would be sad, she thought, if any more bookshops went out of business. Arriving at the shop, she found they had stacks of the titles she was after. It looked as though it was selling well. She bought a copy and left. It was after 6, and Kotoko remembered being dazzled by the evening sun, low in the sky. She'd squinted, her gaze landing on the station for no particular reason, when out walked her brother. "Hey, Yuito," she called over to him. "Oh, hi, Kotoko," he replied. It was a chance meeting, but both station and bookshop were in their neighbourhood, not even 10 minutes' walk from home. If either of them went out, they'd usually think of heading home around now in order to make it back in time for dinner. So bumping into him wasn't such an unusual coincidence. Heading back? Yes. They didn't talk on the way, but just walked along in silence. When they were together, they didn't feel the need to make conversation. Kotoko's mind was on the book she'd just bought. She was looking forward to getting home and starting it. She didn't have the faintest suspicion that anything other than a peaceful evening awaited. Her brother's presence hardly even registered with her. When they'd been walking for 5 minutes, they stopped at the traffic lights. It was a narrow crossroads leading to the station, and it was always busy. Kotoko had felt no sense of foreboding. She just stood there, waiting. She hadn't looked at her brother. She didn't know what expression he'd had on his face as they waited for the lights. They had only been standing there for a moment when the lights changed. Kotoko stepped off the curb without a glance at Yuito. They were more than halfway across the road when it happened. She heard the noise of an engine close by, too close, and she looked round sharply. A car was racing towards them, towards Kotoko, at furious speed. "It's going to hit me!" She sensed the danger, but her body froze and she couldn't run. She was petrified, her legs paralyzed by fear. She almost squeezed her eyes shut in terror. Then suddenly she felt a thump on her back. For an instant she thought the car had hit her, but the impact had come from another direction. Someone had sent her flying. Kotoko tumbled onto the far pavement. She had scraped her knees and banged her elbows, but the car had missed her. What happened? She wished she didn't know, that she'd remained ignorant of the facts. But there was a moment when Kotoko had looked back. She should have closed her eyes, but she hadn't, and she'd seen it all. It was her brother who had pushed her out of the way, who had saved her. Just as the car had been about to hit her, he had given her a powerful shove. "Why?" Kotoko murmured, but no one heard her. She was safe, but her brother had been sent flying as the car sped over the crossing. He had landed like a puppet with its strings cut and was no longer moving. He was lying motionless in the road, in an unnatural, twisted pose. A car horn beeped and someone screamed. Voices flew back and forth. "Call an ambulance! Call the police! Hey, are you all right?" The question must have been directed at her. She was aware of it, but was unable to reply. She couldn't think properly, and her voice wouldn't come out. She just gazed at the now unmoving body of her brother. She had a feeling she might have whispered his name. She heard the ambulance and the police sirens, but by the time the medics arrived, Yuito was dead. Kotoko walked along the seashell path. She was unable to hold back her tears, and the scene blurred before her. She had cried every day since her brother died, but she couldn't do so in a place like this. She was supposed to be going to a restaurant, and it would be embarrassing if she arrived all weepy and her eyes puffy. She stopped still and looked up at the heavens, fighting back the tears. Gazing at the sky and its never-ending blueness, she felt as though it would absorb her. Feeling a little calmer now, Kotoko looked at her watch. It was almost the time of her booking. She had better hurry to the Chibineko Kitchen. She was just setting off when it happened. Suddenly a gust came in off the sea. The weather had been so calm, she was unprepared for the strength of the wind, which lifted her hat off her head and carried it away. "Oh no!" The hat soared towards the water. At this rate, it was going to end up in the sea. Kotoko had to either chase after her errant hat or abandon it. But she liked that hat. She wasn't prepared to let it go. She had never been much of a runner, but she dashed off in pursuit. And then a figure appeared, sprinting past her. A man. "He's trying to catch my hat for me." From behind, the person who had overtaken her looked exactly like her dead brother. He was tall and slender, and there was that slightly long hair she remembered. "Yuito!" she murmured in shock.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?